Hi, welcome to Industry RSVP In-Depth here on the Virtual Channel Network. Today, we are bringing to you a very, very special show. We're going to be breaking it up into segments over the next few weeks, but we have listened to you when you have asked us questions about how do actors get involved in the new phenomenon of video games. And we were lucky enough that one of our coworkers, the phenomenal Jenna, is good friends with Todd Jefferson. I heard his goes by TQ, if I'm correct, who is the Marvel Director of Games. That's pretty awesome. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Todd, first thing I want to do is, for everybody at home who's watching and may have heard of you because you're all over the internet, we were just watching some stuff about you at Comic-Con. Can we get a little background about where you're from? Did you know that there was opportunity for you in video games, or did you kind of fall into it?
Well, not knowing how far back you want me to go, I'll just go back to the beginning. So I was born and raised in New York. Moved to California, attended college here, where I studied psychology and Japanese. I blame Godzilla movies for that particular obsession. And to answer your question directly, no, I like a lot of people out there, either play games or don't play games, I really had no idea of the machinery behind making a game. They just sort of magically appeared on shelves every month, every week or something like that, and I would buy one, I'd play it, and then I'd move on to the next one. Never really given a thought about the people and all the work that goes into making video games. But about 13 years ago, I got a friend of mine referred me to this company, Activision, and said, you should apply there as a game tester. And my reaction was, I don't know if it was typical, but I was like, that's not a job, man. That's not a job, that's a hobby. I need something that actually pays me money. I need a job. He goes, no, it's really the job. So I went down there.
But let me stop you. So when you went to Activision, somebody said this was a good idea for you, there's a job for it. Did that person have a connection at Activision? Is it a job that you have to know somebody to get into, like most of the entertainment industry? Or you obviously were good at games and you had to fill out an application, they let you come in?
Well, that's actually funny that you say that, because I was horrible at games.
Really?
When I started at Activision, I was horrible at games. I avoided computers as if I were Amish. But I had a capacity to learn, and I was honest about it in my interview, and they actually appreciated the honesty. I didn't network my way in it. I just sort of showed up and interviewed like everyone else. But, this is Los Angeles. You know how it works in the city. If you know someone, it's always better. So I got the job and just started learning from day one. And, they put me on more projects. They liked what I did. Didn't screw up too much, I hope, and basically rose through the ranks. And 9 years later, I left there and went to Pixar for a couple of years.
Let me stop one more time. So, with 13 years ago when you started to 9 years ago when you left, obviously the video game industry was just learning about itself. I mean, it was growing constantly. So, within Activision or maybe there's companies like that where they're testing jobs. Were there specific ways to move up the rank and file, or were they kind of creating jobs for you as you went, depending on how you were growing?
Well, see, about 15 years ago, I'd say, in my opinion, it was the dawn of the modern era of games. That's when PlayStation showed up and Dreamcast popped up, and Nintendo 64. Those were, I think, the start of the modern age of games. Then it was a little sort of wild, wild west about how games were made. Rules dropping into existence daily, and information trickling down through the masses. It was like we would submit games to a first party like a Sony or a Microsoft or a Nintendo, and then find out what the rules were afterwards. So there was a structure in place though when I started. So there was a career path, which was great. Going from QA the natural path is to go from QA into production.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a great tester. You have a lot of responsibility in quality. QA is quality assurance, by the way. You have a lot of responsibility in quality assurance, and you catch the eye of a producer or an associate producer on whatever project you're on, and you may get tapped to do production testing, and that's sort of your foot in the door for that next big career leap, which is into production. And then you can stay in production, or you can go into development. Then your options really do open up. But QA, I always would associate QA for a video game company to the mailroom of a major corporation in the 80s or 90s.
Right. So then when you left Activision to go to Pixar, what was your title at Activision, and what was your title then when you jumped ship to another company?
I left Activision as a producer, and I joined Pixar as their interactive manager. A lot more syllables, but essentially what I was a licensed steward. What Pixar wanted at the time was someone that was on their side of the table, that could speak games and understand the gaming companies and understand what their requests were, and to translate that to the filmmakers and vice versa. So it's a very particular job role, and it was something that I had experience with at Activision, working with Marvel and working with DreamWorks and working with other big IP holders. So I really jumped at the chance. And I mean, it's Pixar. You know, how many times times you get an offer to work at Pixar?
No, I hear you.
So I didn't even look twice.
So do you think around this was the time that you knew this was more than just a good job for you, that this was going to be your career?
I think I knew that within my first year and a half as a tester. Just being exposed to that world and just the fun of it. You play and live in video games all day. From a QA standpoint, it's great starting out just playing games and sort of refining how you communicate, how you work with other personality types, and then in production you get a little bit, you're a little more adept at it. And then I like to sum it up as in QA you find the bugs, in production you make them. So there's a little more creative input on the production level, even more so at a developer level. And even at Pixar, you've got, you're paired with the right teams, and you do have a substantial amount of creative input. And for me, that was and remains the most appealing part of the job, just the pure creative energy of it.
That's awesome. Before we move on to Pixar and then Marvel, I'd like to backtrack to ask if any of our viewers are contemplating going into the gaming industry to start in QA, whether they're in Los Angeles or in Ohio. Do you have any advice for how they could do that, or is there only certain regions that people would even be eligible to do something like that?
There are areas of concentration for game development and game publishing. Santa Monica, Activision's corporate headquarters is there. EA Los Angeles is there. A smattering of different development teams are there. San Francisco is another hotspot. Seattle is huge. Chicago. There are certain cities that have very strong video game communities. So more than likely, even if you don't start out in one of those major cities, you'll probably end up there in one of them eventually. Your career will just take you there.
Do they advertise those online on their website as far as the opening positions, and this is what you click on?
Yeah, you can go to any one of their sites and just check their careers page, and they'll look for anything from executive vice presidents to temp QA testers. So that's probably the best and most immediate resource that you can go to find a job there. But is there a certain set of prerequisites? I will say that I doubt very highly that I would have gotten a job now with the same skill sets I had then. I think it's become a little more specialized as the industry has grown and matured. We've become better at figuring out what we do and what we need. But I'd say if you're in school, a great thing to do is to get an internship. at a developer, at a publisher, at a license holder. We have interns at Marvel for games. I don't know how much they learn, but they're free labor, so it's great. But an internship is great. It allows you to make some really good connections. So when you go into college or when you're out of college and looking for a job, at least you have a starting point. So that's a really good way. And like I said before, the way Los Angeles spins is networking. So
Absolutely.
The more people you know, the better your chances are, I think. But also, I think your educational background is going to weigh in heavily.
To show that you have some commitments that you can follow through on the things you start.
Precisely. I mean, a college degree, that's what everyone's looking for, and that's that first demonstration that you can follow through on something that's long term. And that translates for games. We develop games for 2 years minimum, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 years for some games. So all that time you have to keep your focus and keep your eye on the prize and what you're doing. And it might get a little muddy on a day to day, but you have to be one of those people that can stick with it long term. But I think there are unbelievably now, and I think this is wonderful about education and our industry. You can actually get a degree in game design and project management, and you can go to school for it now.
And that's got to be a huge boon to companies who develop games.
Oh, definitely.
To have somebody who's been trained in school for that.
Mm-hmm. Somebody that has at least some sort of working knowledge of the industry. Like I said, when I came up, it was really sort of wild, wild west, and you would apprentice unofficially under someone, meaning they would just pair you with the guy in the group that had the most experience, and you just kind of sat on his shoulder and you did everything he did. You learned by working with that guy, and that was the system for a very long time. And now there's courses of education, and I think it's fantastic.
That's pretty awesome. If you don't mind, we're going to take a break. Sure. Because when we come back next week, we are going to get into the really good stuff of what Todd is doing with Marvel, how that came about, and maybe we can even learn a little about how actors work with Marvel and Marvel video games for their movie or their video games that are based on movies. So thank you for joining us, Todd. We'll come right back.